In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to knit with straight needles this little hat. It's very easy to make. I made it with the garter stitch. I also did the matching little pants and the matching little sweater. In the information box, I'll go ahead and leave you links to these tutorials. This little hat is for 3 to 6 months, but you can easily make it smaller or bigger from 0 to 3 months and up to 6 to 10 years old. In the information box, I'll go ahead and leave you the number of stitches that you need to cast on and the number of rows that you need to make for each one of the sizes. And as always, if you prefer a written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop up here on the right hand side and in the information box below. Thank you so much for your support. Now, to make this little hat along with a matching little sweater and the matching pants, this is the yarn that I used. This is a medium number 4 yarn, but you can also use any Aran weight or 10 ply. For the 3 to 6 month size, I used a total of 30 grams. Depending on the size that you make, you may need less or more. Okay, let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notifications bell. And if you like this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. To make this little hat, I'll be using these 5mm circular knitting needles. These are US size 8. I'm using circular needles. These are 32-inch long, but you can also use straight needles. We're going to be knitting this little hat in rows. Now, the size that I'm going to make is for 3 to 6 months, but you can make this little hat from 0 to 3 months and up to 6 to 10 years old. In the information box below, I'll go ahead and leave you that information. This is the little hat that I did for 0 to 3 months. Now, for the 0 to 3 month size, I'm just going to tell you here, I cast on a total of 56 stitches, and then I did a total of 5 rows for the ribbing here. This is a 2x2 ribbing. This is where you knit 2 and then purl 2. So I did 5 rows here. For the body, I did a total of 24 rows of garter stitch, and then I did a total of 12 rows here of decrease. The decreasing part is done every other row. So for the 3 to 6 months, which is what I'm going to do here, it's going to be the same, the decreasing part. The only difference here is the number of rows for the body. I'll leave all of that information down here in the information box as well. Like I said, you can make it from 0 to 3 months and up to 6 to 10 years old. Now, the yarn that I'm using, it's this number 4 yarn. At the beginning of the video, I showed you the yarn that I'm using. You can also use any Aran weight or 10 ply. If you need gauge information, you can also find that in the information box below. I'm making this little hat to match this Laurel baby cardigan. Again, this is how it's going to look, and you can use straight needles like I said. So here, to begin, the first thing that we need to do is we need to cast on our stitches. Here, I'm going to cast on a total of 56 stitches. Again, for the 0 to 3 months and the 3 to 6 months, you cast on the same number of stitches. The only difference is the number of rows for the body. Now, I'm going to show you how to cast on your stitches using the long tail cast on method. You can use any method of your choice. I just happen to like this method. So here, to begin and do the long tail cast on method, the first thing that we need to do is we need to measure the yarn. Here, I'm going to wrap the yarn around 20 times. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, I have enough yarn here for approximately 20 stitches. Double it up. I have enough for 40. Double it up again. I have enough for about 60. I like to always add a little bit more. It's best to have some left than to have to repeat this. I'm going to cast on 56 stitches. Now, make a slip knot. This is the yarn that we just measured. Insert your needle through this loop and open up the yarn. Insert your finger like this, and you're going to go from left to right, grab a loop like this. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on until you have a total of 56 stitches. I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished casting on my stitches. I have 56 stitches. Again, for the 0 to 3 month size and the 3 to 6 months, you cast on the same number of stitches, 56. Here at the end, I tied a knot so that this last stitch here does not open up too much. And now to begin here, we're going to start with the bottom of the hat. We're going to do a 2 by 2 ribbing here. That is where you knit 2, then purl 2. For the 0 to 3 month size, I did 5 rows. For the 3 to 6 months, I'm going to make 6 rows. So to begin here, I'm going to start with knit 2 here at the beginning. Now the next 2, you're going to purl 2. The next 2, knit 2. The next 2, purl 2. Now this first row is always the hardest, so take your time. The next 2, knit 2, and so on. This is how I'm going to work the first row of the ribbing here. So continue. I'm going to go ahead and finish this row, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of row 1 of the ribbing. These are my last 2 stitches. Here at the end, I'm going to purl 2. And here is row 1. I have 56 stitches. Now turn for row 2. For rows 2 through 6, I'm going to slip this first stitch and then knit the next stitch. So now we're going to purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2. Continue like this to the end of this second row. I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the second row. Here, these last 2 stitches, I'm going to purl 2. Now turn for row 3 of the ribbing, slip the first stitch, knit the next. Now purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2. Continue like this to the end of this third row. I'm here at the end of row 3. Here at the end, the last 2 stitches, you purl. Now turn for row 4. Row 4 up to row 6, you're just going to repeat the same thing. Slip the first stitch, knit 1, then purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2. After you finish this 4th row, you're going to turn and repeat the same thing as row 3. Now for the 0 to 3 month size, I only did 5 rows here, but if you like, you can also do 6. It's okay. So continue and I'll meet you at the end of row 6. I finished making the ribbing here for the bottom of the hat. This is where I knit 2, purl 2, and I did 6 rows. Now for rows 1 through 28 of the body, this is what we're going to do. In this first row, I'm just going to slip the first stitch, but going forward, I'm always going to knit the first stitch. So here for row 1 of the body, I'm going to knit the next stitch and just knit across. I'm going to continue with the garter stitch here for the body, and again I'm going to make a total of 26 rows. If you like, you can place a stitch marker, but with the garter stitch it's easy to count the number of rows. So here I'm just going to continue to the end of this row where I just knit across. I'll come back and show you once I finish this row to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of row 1 of the body. This is where I knit across. Here, the last 2 stitches, I'm going to knit as well. There. Now turn for row 2. Now from here on, this is going to be the wrong side and this here is going to be the right side. So you can place a stitch marker if you like here on this side. Row 1 was worked on the right side. There is no right or wrong side here because with the garter stitch, it's the same on either side. So here to begin, row 2 up to row 26, you're just going to knit every stitch, including the first stitch. It's important that you knit the first stitch because once we finish, we're going to seam the hat, and we're going to use these stitches here at the end to make an almost seamless join there. So make sure to always knit the first stitch. Now I'm just going to knit across here to the end of this second row. Here's the last stitch, knit, now turn. And now for row 3 and on, you're just going to repeat the same thing. You just knit across. So continue like this, make a total of 26 rows here for the body. To count your rows here in garter stitch, you just count the little bumps here. That's row 1, that's 2, 3, 4, or you can just count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. For the 0 to 3 month size, I did a total of 24. So go ahead and finish this part. I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished making this part of the hat. Now here in garter stitch, I have a total of 26 rows. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26 rows. Now what I'm going to do next is just place some stitch markers. Like I said, I have 56 stitches. If you divide that by 8, that gives you 7. So I'm going to count 7 stitches and then place a stitch marker. That's 2, 4, 6, 7. Place a stitch marker. Again, count 7, 2, 4, 6, 7. Place a stitch marker, and so on. Two, 4, 6, 7, and then a stitch marker. Now I have 8 sections with 7 stitches in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have 7 stitch markers. Now if you're making this in a different size and you have a different number of stitches that you cast on, all you need to do is just divide that by 8, and whatever number you get, that's how many stitches you're going to leave in between the stitch markers, and the decreasing part here will be the same. So here to begin row 1, this is going to decrease 8 stitches at the end of this row. So to begin here, we're going to knit up to the last 2 stitches before the stitch markers. So here for this first section, I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to knit 2 together. Now past the stitch marker, for the next section, you're going to repeat the same thing. Knit 5. And the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker, knit 2 together. You're going to do this to the end of the row. Knit 5. Then knit 2 together. Knit 5. If you cast on more stitches, you will have more stitches here in between the stitch markers, but the important thing is that the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you knit 2 together, and you're going to continue until you have a couple stitches left in between the stitches. Here's the last section, same thing, knit 5, and here at the end, knit 2 together. There, at the end of this first row of decreases, I have a total of 48 stitches. We started with 56, 56 minus 8, that's a total of 48 stitches. Now we're going to turn for row 2. Row 2 is being worked on the wrong side. For row 2, all you need to do is just knit across, including this first stitch, like this. At the end of this row, you're going to have 48 stitches as well. So continue, finish this second row. I will meet you at the end. I finished row 2. Now we're going to turn. For row 3, we're going to decrease. We're going to repeat the same thing. Now, if you cast on a different number of stitches, in between the stitch markers, you're going to have a different number. The important thing is that you knit up to the last 2 stitches and then you knit 2 together, and that way you're going to be decreasing stitches at the end of the decreasing row. Now for row 3 here, I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches. So here I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4. I have the 2 stitches before the stitch marker, so here I'm going to knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, and again repeat the same thing. Knit 2, 3, 4, then knit 2 together. Continue like this to the end of this third row. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the third row. Here's the last section. Again, knit 4 and then knit 2 together here at the end. Always remember to knit 2 together at the end of the row. There. Here's row 3. At the end of this row, I have a total of 40 stitches. Now turn for row 4. So odd number of rows is where we're going to decrease, and then even number of rows is the wrong side, so all you do is just knit across. So here to start off row 4, all you do is just knit across like this. Go ahead and finish row 4. I will meet you at the end. I finished the 4th row. I just knit across. Row 4 is being worked on the wrong side. I have 40 stitches at the end of that 4th row. Now for row 5, I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches. So here I'm going to knit 3. That's 1, 2, 3, and then knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, knit 3 again, then knit 2 together. This is how you're going to continue for this 5th row. Now here at the end, don't forget to knit 2 together, and at the end of this 5th row, you're going to have 32 stitches. After you finish row 5, you're going to turn, and then for row 6, you're just going to knit across. Go ahead and finish these 2 rows. I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished row 5 and then I did row 6. At the end of the 5th row, I had a total of 32 stitches. Then I just turned and knit across. I just finished row 6. Now for row 7, we're going to repeat the same thing. I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So here I'm going to knit 2 and then knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, then knit 2, and again knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, knit 2, then knit 2 together. Continue like this to the end of this 7th row. Here at the end, don't forget to knit 2 together. At the end of the 7th row, you're going to have 24 stitches. Then you're going to turn for row 8 and just knit across. So go ahead and finish these 2 rows. I will meet you at the end of the 8th row. I finished the 7th row. At the end of the 7th row, I had 24 stitches. Then I turned for row 8 where it's just knit across. And at the end of this row, I also have 24 stitches. Now for row 9, we're going to decrease. So here to begin, I'm going to knit 1 and then knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, knit 1, then knit 2 together. Pass the stitch marker, knit 1, knit 2 together, and so on until you finish this 9th row. Now at the end of this 9th row, you're going to have 16 stitches. Don't forget to knit 2 together here at the end, turn, and then for row 10, you're just going to knit across. And at the end of the 10th row, you're going to have 16 stitches as well. Go ahead and finish these 2 rows. I will meet you at the end. I finished row 9 and 10. At the end of the 9th row, I had 16 stitches. Then I turned for row 10, and for row 10, all I did was just knit across. I also have 16 stitches at the end of that row. Now for row 11, I'm just going to knit 2 together across. If you have more stitches left, you're just going to continue and do the same thing until you have 2 stitches left, which is where I am right now. And all I'm going to do here is just knit 2 together. So here to begin row 11, all you do is just knit 2 together. And you can remove the stitch markers. We don't need them anymore. Knit 2 together, and so on. This is how you're going to continue for row 11. At the end of this row, you're going to have 8 stitches. After you finish this row, you're going to turn for row 12, and for row 12, all you're going to do is just knit across, and you're also going to have 8 stitches. Again, if you have more stitches here, all you're going to do is just knit up to the last 2 stitches and decrease, and then continue with the next row where you just knit across, and you're going to do that until you have 2 stitches in between the stitch markers, just like I did here, and then just knit 2 together. For the different sizes that I'm going to leave in the description box, that's what you're going to do. You cast on a different number of stitches, so you will have a little bit more to decrease. Now here at the end, you knit 2 together. This is how I finish row 11. Now for row 12, what I like to do here at the end, this last row, is I purl across. This gives it a nicer finish, but you can certainly knit across if you would like. I'm just going to purl across. So go ahead and finish row 12. I'll meet you at the end. I'll show you how to remove the stitches and then seam your hat. I finished the 12th row. In this row, I purled across, but that is optional. You can also just knit across. So this completes the decreases. Now what I'm going to do is just remove these stitches. If you are making this in a different size and you cast on a different number of stitches, then you're just going to continue and repeat the last 2 rows where you decrease and then knit the next row across until you only have 8 stitches left here. For all the sizes, you should only have 8 stitches left here. That's how I wrote the pattern. So here, to continue and close the top of the hat, I'm going to measure my yarn, I don't know, 3 times the length of this part here. That's 2, 3. Now cut your yarn. Now with the yarn needle here, we're going to remove these remaining 8 stitches. Now pass this yarn through this loop here, insert the needle like this, and that's going to create a knot to secure these stitches here at the end. Now we're going to seam the hat. The important thing here is that each row corresponds to the opposite side. For example, this row here, you can see this row corresponds with this one here. So we're going to start with the last row. The last row that I did was the knit row, so this row here. So you can see the stitch there. Insert the needle like this and then go through the same row on the opposite side right here. And now we're going to go through the next row, this row here. You can see the little bump, so I'm going to go through this stitch right here And we're doing this from the right side. And this is how I'm going to continue until I close completely the hat. Here's the last row of garter stitch. Now we're going to give this a little tug. I think that looks pretty good. So now we're going to join the brim. Here you just have to make sure that the rows correspond to the opposite side. Now this part here, just give it a little tug and stretch it a little bit so it looks nice and straight. I think that looks pretty good. So once you do that, you just join this stitch with the opposite side. Now it's joined. Go through the inside or the wrong side here. And I'm right next to this column of stitches, so I'm just going to hide my end through this column. So just come through the V here and then just go through the next V. Work your way down a couple of stitches. Give it a little tug, make sure that it's nice and straight, and you can cut your end. And that part is done. Now this tail end here that was left when we cast on our stitches, we can do the same thing. This part is done. That's how it looks. And here is where we closed the hat. The little hat is all done. And this is how it looks. Now let's measure this from top to bottom. Let's see. It's measuring 6 inches, which is a little bit over 15 centimeters. And the width, it's about 17 centimeters or 6.75 inches. So based on these measurements, this little hat is for baby boys and girls between 3 and 6 months old. Here is the newborn one. We cast on the same number of stitches, but the length here is longer. This is a very stretchy stitch pattern, so it will accommodate beautifully for the 3 to 6 month size. The brim as well, see how stretchy that is. Now let me try it on my little model here. Her head circumference is for 3 to 6 months approximately. Now you can always make more rows here and then start the decrease if you want a foldable brim. With this one, because it is a stretchy stitch, like I said, you can still fold it. It'll just be a little bit more stretched, but it still looks nice. As you can see, this is how it looks with the folded brim. Look how cute that is. So remember, you can make this hat from 0 to 3 months and up to 6 to 10 years old. In the information box, I'll go ahead and leave the number of stitches that you need to cast on and the number of rows. And as always, if you prefer a written pattern, it'll be available in my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to that in the information box below. This was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.